With no further ado, I will introduce our speakers today. We have John Bamenek and Lance James.
Great start.
I do technology good, people. All right. Our talk, New Scourge of Ransomware. What did you do?
I don't know. Just press the space bar, I think, or yeah, one of those.
There we go. Okay. That's you.
All right. Well, actually, go let's. All right. Cool. Sweet. So, everybody knows what ransomware is this year, right? Please raise your hand. Anybody get infected with it? Keep those hands up. No, I'm just kidding. So, has anybody actually had a problem with it this year, with whether it's clients or personal, grandma, whatever, right? So it's in a room this size, that's at 9 a.m. in the morning, that's a significant amount, right? So that sample set's already going to be an example of what we're looking at. Our agenda today, and John really gets most of the credit for writing this talk because he's not a procrastinator like I am, but we're going to talk about, obviously ransomware for people who don't know, but we're going to skip that if most people, seems like they got a clue there. We're going to talk about some of the history of ransomware and a study on CryptoLocker. John and I kind of put together the CryptoLocker working group when this whole incident last year came about, CryptoLocker coming on the scene, and I think we're going to go through that. Discuss the intelligence response to it, and the success, and pieces that were difficult as well. Slowdowns, things like that, things you can lesson learn and take for the next round. And we have kind of a major theme we want to talk about that's more important that I think needs to be getting out soon is how to do takedowns right. Liaisons with law enforcement, the industry, where the industry plays and where the government or law enforcement may stop. How to work with international, laws, and also just in general how to, policies and just people skills really. And then kind of looking at what we're dealing with in the future. So, well, I'm John Babbitt. I'm Lance James, head of cyber intelligence at Deloitte. Obviously,
and he smells delicious. After this, you should really smell him because it's quite mansome. My name's John Bamenek. I run my own firm, Bamenek Consulting. I'm also affiliated with the SANS Internet Storm Center.
Is Bamenek related to the Bamenek you?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Got it.
That
Just
would be
double checking.
I just lack creativity.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
So
we're gonna have to work on that when we leave.
I'll be right on that. So quick description of what is ransomware. Any attack that relies on extortion. It wouldn't be a talk that it didn't involve a lolcat, but this one's actually relevant. Generally two types. There's a cop ransomware, we're locking your computer, pay your fine to the FBI or NCA or whatever particular thing. Generally, you get it because you've done something naughty. There's been a couple of cases where somebody has been perusing child pornography, gets ransomware, go to the police, help me with this problem. Oh, thanks for reporting this problem. Oh, by the way, you're under arrest for child porn. But no, thank you for reporting this. And the second type, which is mostly what we're going to talk today, is cryptography locker ransomware, where basically information is being held hostage for ransom. Yeah.
So I'm going to bring up actually the first piece, even though it's not the biggest theme in our talk, is ransomware in general, though, from a psychological perspective. We're going to go through CryptoLocker. It's also a psychological effect to the user. But this concept, because of the effectivity of this, the first type we've seen actually a study or a situation where I think it was in Romania, someone actually committed suicide over a piece of ransomware, believing it was real. And don't know necessarily all the details or anything like that, but it has caused severe kinetic effects. So,
correct. You actually jumped ahead. We're talking about that in the next slide.
Oh, damn.
That's why he can't have nice things. Ransomware, despite that CryptoLocker being in the news late last year, this year, and ransomware generally, it's not something that's really new. It's not a new phenomenon. The first kind of known prominent case goes all the way back to '89, where ransomware was spread with what was called the AIDS Trojan or AIDS virus on floppy disks. You had to send money to a P.O. box to get whatever to unlock your computer. So very slow, I guess it was effective for '89, but there wasn't a whole lot you can do with it. But this is a concept that's been around, for a long time. in early this century, because of ways technology developed, there's all sorts of new means to leverage this particular attack threat. You've got electronic delivery via network, watering hole attacks, which we've seen just this week, which I'll talk about towards the end. There's all sorts of naughty websites where you get the cop ransomware, where it's very prominent, people looking at porn and the likes. The means of electronic payment, sending money to a P.O. box in Panama, waiting for something to come back, that takes time. Bitcoin, you're waiting, you can process that fairly quickly. And some of the other means of payment that we'll talk about. But generally, at least prior to CryptoLocker, the encryption was still unsophisticated. I mean, just think of how much we as an industry screw up encryption. The bad guys have basically the same problem.
Yeah. Tons of it's usually homebrew. For those who've never done any malware reversing or really understand this, the difference between the symmetric and asymmetric in the effectiveness is that the symmetric key is usually installed or in part of the binary of the malware itself. So it does get, historically, security researchers have recovered this quite easily and been able to provide like a quick, here's how you unlock your files. Right? Today with 2-key encryption, this is something we thought probably would come a lot earlier than it did, I would say, but it actually came last year, pretty much. And that was our big scare. It's like, when is that going to happen? Someone's going to actually implement public key cryptography for malware in general, and in this case, ransomware.
Then do it right. So, ransomware generally was a growing threat. There's Reviton, a couple of other things that I mentioned at the bottom of the slide that has been happening. Encryption is hard and people get it right. Lance talked about it. There are ways to, even when people did asymmetric encryption, there was ways to get the private key. Either it was on the machine or there was some other means of recovering it, or they used the same private key to encrypt all of their victims. So once you steal one key, you've got everything done. So usually there was some way to recover the data. So, with all these things in mind, as a researcher, somebody says, ransomware, this is scary. I'm not thinking it particularly seriously. When somebody says ransomware, I'm thinking something more along the lines of this, right? A crying baby who's got an Angry Bird stolen. It's a marketing threat. Ransomware was kind of the, purview, at least in my mind, of chumbalones and jackalopes. And right now you're hearing a bunch of people look up chumbalones in the Urban Dictionary. But, it was unsophisticated actors. So people who may have caused harm, because you don't need a lot of skill to cause harm, but nothing that's really going to do large scale, cause real things that would capture my interest as somebody who grew up on MTV when they still played music. I've kind of got ADD, so it's kind of hard to capture my interest. Okay. Oh, you look confused.
No.
But you smell great.
Thank you.
About August this year, CryptoLocker appears. I actually, I get a call from one of my clients. This is how I first found it, from a local government agency. Their director, basically everything got encrypted. So a tech support firm ran AV, stomped all over the disk, so there's no real forensic work to be done. But they called and says, hey, can you help us out? And they said, ransomware, all your stuff's encrypted? No, I can't help you out. Well, please, it would really mean a lot to us. Yeah, I could bill you, but I'm not going to give you anything in return. Please, fine, I'll do it, whatever. Now, I never got their data back. Well, actually, they're getting their data back now, but we'll talk about that later. But at the time, there wasn't anything that I could do about it, but it captured my interest. There's lots of things that this did differently that captured the imagination.
And I'm going to share my side of how we came into CryptoLocker and kind of actually technically met, I believe. So I get a call from a partner or director at our company about a friend. It was a colleague, also running, I think he was the CTO of a company, and he gets hit with it. Mary Galligan was actually a director at our company, came from the FBI running the New York division for, I think, a very long time, cyber. So she gives us our call, our research group, and asks us to take a look at it. We start examining the crypto and everything, which we'll go ahead and talk about in just a second. But the interesting part of it is that the person involved actually at first denied paying it and was asking for help. And we started looking into, let's look into it and how much is it going to cost them to pay versus, do a forensics. And as we all know, forensics is not a cheap process, nor is it a quick process. At that time, due to Mary's connections and some of the stuff we work with, she gave a call and we had sent our analysis over to her to, open a case actually in New York. And then from that point, the shifting stuff that goes on in law enforcement, it went over to DC because I believe they handle ransomware in general. And that kind of started the whole liaison of the FBI work and also with the UK, the NCCA UK stuff. So Just so what happened then was John and I actually ended up being in certain circles together, basically kind of connected on this, and both moved right about the same time on this, and we're very diligent about moving forward quickly with this. And I think we both kind of synchronistically recognize the same issues need to happen. We got to move on this. We got to get the community going. And that's kind of how we got that going. So we started the working group. So
yeah, no, exactly. So yeah, we met a lot of great people in the working group. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Yeah. But CryptoLocker was the first, at least in my recollection, of cryptography-based ransomware that did it right. They were running C2 servers, or proxies more accurately, that basically they generated the private public key pair, transmitted the public key to the victim, everything got encrypted. So the private key was never even on the proxy, it was on some back-end server, but it never touched the victim. They used a domain generation algorithm, generated 1,000 domains a day, so there's some resiliency and how they operated their command and control network. So, they're thinking about things. They're like, okay, we're going to be able to move things fairly quickly. Game over Zeus was its sole delivery method. At least initially it was some proof of concept stuff, but mid-August, September on, only Game over Zeus is how it was deployed.
And if I may say, I was talking to David Dagan last night from Georgia Tech, who did a lot of the assistance on this part of the research, the Game over Zeus 2 relationship. And I didn't want to post in his slides without kind of bringing him up on the stage. But basically, I advise many people to reach out and talk to Georgia Tech a little bit about some of this research, because they were actually to put together not a suspicion of only Game over Zeus, but actually through the DNS research he did, was able to actually push together, this is GOZ, this is GOES, this is CryptoLocker, here's the relationship. Some great work from him as well. So.
Yeah, no, like I said, there's a lot of good people who did a lot of things on this. And the other aspect of this is he used Bitcoin for payment. It used some other pay card systems. So it had some electronic delivery methods. I mean, Bitcoin, many of you know, is anonymous. It's not private, but it's an anonymous way of transferring money back and forth. And some of the pay card systems, again, operated outside the conventional financial system. So they were able to get money to get paid. So it's kind of a novel and interesting thing for me. But ultimately, this came down to they had a viable business model. I mean, we're talking about criminals, yes, but organized crime operates like a business, albeit one without morals.
Yeah. And one of the things, in highlighting from earlier, the previous slide as well as this business model, resiliency, if you haven't noticed, is the theme in the last couple of years. Not only DGA, C2, all this stuff, but we saw a 3-tier architecture. So when we were looking for where is the C2, what we would call a C2, which ended up calling it a C3, because we had 2 layers of proxies, and then going into the actual hiding, basically spending time kind of hiding the actual mothership for the data. So this actually took a lot of time extra for us security researchers, and it increased their business model efficiency quite well. So yeah.
No, absolutely. So, I'm going to guess that, maybe people don't understand what I mean by mob rules, but these guys operate on kind of your standard mob rules. The analogy I use is for those of you who've watched the Godfather movies or anything involving the mafia, you walk into usually a highly immigrant neighborhood and says, hey, you got a nice store here. It'd be a shame if anything happened to it. You pay us a little bit of money, we'll take care of your business for you. So these guys, you'd pay them $300. I mean, prior to this, you may pay ransom, you get nothing out of it. These guys made sure as much as possible you did.
You forgot the Russian accent when you were doing that one.
Well, I was trying to do Italian.
Yeah, but the point is,
fair point.
Russian mob.
I don't have a good Russian. I don't have
bringing
a
it up.
Russian
I'm
accent.
just saying.
Yeah, my accent sucks, but you smell great.
Thanks.
The other part of this business model, you compare to credit card fraud or financial fraud. There's an entire network that's needed to really pull off credit card or financial fraud. You've got your kiddies and your watering holes stealing credit cards. You've got somebody buying them, people who are cloning it. You've got money mules. You've got all sorts of different roles involved in this. With ransomware, all you need is a kit and somebody who's walked into an ATM or who can monetize Bitcoin. It is a very flat organization necessary. So you've got high margins and low maintenance. So it's something that really has ended up capturing the imagination of many other groups out there, which has led to the proliferation that we're seeing.
I'll bring up this, and this is speculation, but I feel that CryptoLocker, now that we've seen the success, if another returned, we hope not to, I can sense that the developer himself is going to be charging a lot more this time. I would think so.
Yes. What's up, bro?
Really, is that?
It's your laptop, man.
ASDF, that's it. That's half my password. So
It's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Do we have this stuff in there, though?
You want me to find
the forensic stuff?
I don't know.
Okay, well, I'll actually do this, and I'm going to just cut through this. So we may end up having other pieces to this, but this is, so ASDF, no, I'm kidding. So the DGA, let's talk about the DGA for a second. The DGA in this case was actually interestingly technical, and I don't want to rush into how the working group got together and all this stuff, but some of these little technical pieces we're going to kind of run to, but I'm going to fit them in between some of the stuff we're talking about. So, for instance, there's some funny stuff that comes up. For instance, the DGA that was used, which we'll talk about as well later, is also a variant off of, if you look up domain generation algorithm on Wikipedia, minus a mod certain number is actually the one on Wikipedia as an example. So there's a little fast fact I wanted to kind of give you. Also, I'm going to kind of step into the relationship that occurred for us helping. We got hard drives, seizures, things like that were going on. We got these hard drives going on. We're going to go into that in detail. But the interesting pieces with this was all the OPSEC that involved in this, like down to the tier 1, tier 2, 3, down to the public key cryptography, down to the Win32 API. The crypto API was actually the native Windows system. So, the architecture thought out with this was actually very clear. It wasn't something that was just done overnight. It was actually for once, whoever, who was the people working on this was really set down and actually architected and then engineered something, actually. And I'm actually, one of the biggest concerns we had was when we saw this from a security perspective and the slowdown it took us. It took a lot more people in quality in that sense and quantity, but basically to hit harder what maybe a few researchers could do to yet another, some other ransomware out there. So one of the big pieces is that we were concerned about this epidemic. It was going to impact high. We saw the money. We're going to go into that stuff. But the actual copycats, how do you prevent something that works so well to suddenly be the next thing in the future? And so this was a big concern for us. And so a lot of the technical stuff, including the reversing of the DGA, which we'll go into, and also the demise of the DGA in the first place, really comes to cleans up your viable business model we're talking about. And it kind of scared us because CryptoLocker, the word, has become synonymous with ransomware as a brand name for just ransomware. So, and we've seen a lot of copycats as well. So we'll be getting into that ASDF section in just a second. Thanks.
So a little bit recovery of defenses. You've got a victim that has that. Obviously, the first is just, a lot of this is best practice stuff. If you get your files encrypted, well, if it's important, you should have it backed up. You should be able to recover it. If you're Windows 7 and greater, there's shadow volumes where you can restore previous versions, assuming you can do it in a reasonable time frame. There are some ninja forensics tricks that can be done. Right.
So, for instance, and the probabilities of it was really low. So, again, backups is the number one thing. There was a temp file that was actually generated while it was actually encrypting your data. The problem with the NTFS file journaling system is the overwrites are pretty quick as this goes. So we recommended to people to shut your computer off the minute you knew about this, in hopes that we may be able to get deleted, still available deleted files in this. This was a off chance of getting some, getting not. And also, in some cases, memory analysis could recover some files that were in use at time. So those are some of the tricks. So.
Sure. You can prevent execution out of the app data directories. There's more precise path names you can use that you can look up online. But keeping things executing randomly out of there, a lot of your email-based malware stuff would be executed out of there if you're mindless enough to do it. Could a user override that, save it to his desktop? Sure. And some spam campaigns actually tell you to do this. Oh, here's your shipping invoice. Please save this to your desktop before you try to run it. But this provides at least one layer of defense that requires the user to do something else to override it. And then obviously you can block the C2 addresses with whatever's provided for intelligence.
So this actually goes into that reversing DGA, right? So the C2s in this case were over 1,020 domains per day. Most of you guys understand the domain generation algorithm type concepts, correct? So I'm going to kind of break it down very simply, but basically the idea is to be resilient and autonomous, right? very little hands-on when it comes to opportunistic stuff. Game Over Zeus also being like this. What it is it generates domains every single day. They're strings, right? They're usually random strings, which there are also some techniques I'm going to talk about just now that are highlighted in some of our previous work that we did on this, and I think some of the stuff you did. These random strings, then basically when the malware gets on an environment or on an asset, it'll go out and scan for the days, based on the timestamp, the days 1,020 domains out there. And it'll go and look for the one that hits and actually says, hey, I've got this. So they don't register all the domains. They register a few, maybe 1 or 2 or 3. Now, also, we registered a bunch, including Georgia Tech, and registered most of them on purpose so that we actually have information and data stats and actually a low minimum window here. So in that case, though, when you want to look at prevention, what we did was we reversed the DGA. Thank you, Dimitri from Sunbelt, and then our team did it, and a few people other followed up. And made sure that it was current and accurate, and you did a lot of testing on it, thanks, John. And so we did this, and we provided it a feed in different ways. Some people threw it in their feeds. I think you had a free feed. There was, we wanted to get it out to everybody. Once that feed hit in, right, and you got that in your proxy, if it blocked it, and it could not get into those, because we were generating 1 day ahead every day, right, so that it was preemptive. If you hit that, and you said it, you had detection, you go, oh, there's that box, it has CryptoLocker on it, but it can't reach out. If it can't reach out, it can't get the key from the C2. And so that's a very important piece I think we need to add to.
And something we noticed, I'll talk a little bit in a couple of slides, is that we noticed there were times they simply had no domains registered. Well, CryptoLocker would keep scanning and keep scanning and keep scanning, so they didn't need to have domains registered. Right. As soon as they popped up on the radar, you get your key, they get paid. So, for instance, the Russian New Year's, there was nothing registered for like 8 days.
That tells
we thought
us a
they
lot.
went away with somebody, they just went away until somebody realized, yeah, that's a week where Russians pretty much drink nonstop. So they're just not worried about it.
John, I feel you're stereotyping. I think but stereotypically they drink nonstop.
Yeah, well, some stereotypes hold.
Okay, yeah. So I also want to say one thing. If you actually heard what was just described here, what you just described, whether it's stop or not, any other malware out there that does domain generation algorithms, what we did find was everybody familiar with randomness and entropy, right? Like we see this in passwords and things like that. Okay, so entropy, for anybody who doesn't know, is the measurement of how random something or pseudo-random something is on a computer. In this case, the strings here. Your average domain, the proper used non-malicious domain, is about 3.4 bits per byte in general, but it goes up to like 3.7. It can go down based on the string size. In these cases, these things were raised to over 4.0 bits per 4.0 bits per byte for each string case. Now, also what's interesting is if you get that, you wouldn't just say, oh, that's domain. That could be validly very high entropy anyways. But then you also see when something's scanned and it's getting none of those things during the Russian business, the Russian New Year, you would see NXDs, non-existent domain responses. So if you see an asset throwing 1,020 DNS requests and in like less than a minute pretty much and getting a ton of NXDs back or non-existent domain responses, you might want to look at, make a rule for that on your network and say, why is that even occurring, right? Especially if you look at your cache and say, I've never seen those domains in my life, on our network before. So those are kind of things that you would want to do like for use cases or prevention as well, preemptively, because it also might pop up other malware that you're not aware of yet. So yeah, moving on. I said, as a community, we responded about a month late to this, but we eventually woke up and saw the threat for what it was. Seeing police stations infected with this and getting news media coverage, that certainly helped. That was certainly inflammatory. The sophistication got noticed. Ultimately, it was something novel and new. I mean, it was ransomware done right. This is something new. So, we started paying attention to it. And as an aside, it also made for a good case study on how to do threat intelligence. I mean, a lot of people talk about how to do it, but not much in the way of nitty-gritty of how to do it. This particular campaign, and we'll go through some of the steps, made that very easy. And I've spent time traveling around teaching people using this as my case study of how to profile a threat actor and a threat to create an intelligence product and take action to disrupt it. Eventually, like I said, we woke up, we saw the threat, and we created a working group specifically around it. I don't know how many people are on various kind of private
intel sharing lists, but there's several of them. There's overlap to a degree, but not completely. So while many of us are on all of the lists, some of us aren't. So eventually, I just got frustrated because they all have their sharing rules. So you can't one group can't share with another unless authorized. So there's 4 different groups talking about it. And I was like, I got tired of trying to keep track of what lists I could talk about what on, and I just said, you know what? One threat, everybody who's interested, talk here, created a working group around it. Ultimately about 160 people, give or take, took part in this group, and each brought their own special skill sets. So when you talk about reversing a DGA, that's a different skill set, because that's math, than reversing malware, than tracking infrastructure. It takes a lot of different skills to holistically go after one particular threat. And this provided a a venue to do something.
It also welcomed, and one of the, I think, really at a fast pace was the industry to law enforcement relationship very quickly went bidirectional, very quickly for this, on this working group, and it centered everybody. They did not worry about, we just want this information, we're going to silo this or this. The industry and law enforcement are really teamed up very quickly with this working group to work together. And it was no joke. I mean, there'd be phone calls left and right from different people to different people doing different pieces, right? Still keeping it somewhat in the community. Not everybody on the working group would know about every piece, but it encouraged actually law enforcement to be very much involved and utilize the industry very quickly, which is something that needs to be starting to happen, but with obviously some set expectations.
So. No, absolutely. And, the FBI is talking about, please share data with us, or at least the FBI in particular, that's my experience. Share data with us, but there's nothing in return. That's the frustration, so those relationships never tended to bear fruit. That's something that changed with this. I'm sure it happened in other threats. This is just the one I had visibility to. Right. So taking a look at CryptoLocker, a lot of this was a study in contradictions because there are indicators that did not seem, at least on the surface, to reconcile with itself. So you think game over Zeus, silent threat, financial fraud, it wants to persist a long time. There is no subtlety or ambiguity about whether you have CryptoLocker. I mean, it's, hi, all your files are encrypted, you've got a big splash screen. So at a certain point, and we've talked about, there's a relationship between the Gauze crew and CryptoLocker, the people who are responsible for it. Why would people who run Game Over Zeus expose the infection so loudly, And
I have a theory on this that I came up with a while back, and I think we all kind of somewhat suspect this as well. So in many attacks and many types of malware, you have exploit kits out there. It's a website. It's a drive-by download. It hips you, and it drops this stuff on you, right? And the solution is we go after the exploit site, shut that down, done, right? The effectivity of CryptoLocker detection was most at the beginning of its stages was actually usually after someone got infected and reported it and stuff. And so they already had an encrypted set. The reason why they may have used Game Over Zeus for this was because it's almost like having a tunnel with a low footprint, something that we couldn't just shut down. You had to shut down an entire peer-to-peer network to make this effective. And so they were actually, winning the race, getting there before detection was on edge of this. And Zeus being the most prolific and most successfully entered in infiltration into a network or onto a computer. This obviously proved successful and obviously economically viable for CryptoLocker and the Game Over Zeus actors. So.
No, absolutely. They also had basically they were set up for single flux networking, so they were able to move IPs really quickly. They just never did. I mean, they'd sit on the same IP addresses for days, even though they had 300 TTLs. Why? It's an open theory. The point of this is that, if you're doing intelligence, figuring out and resolving these contradictions is where your intelligence value is. And, a lot of stuff is obvious. People want to make money. Great. That's a motivation. Doesn't really give you any real information. But figuring out why you have indicators that are contradicting each other and resolving that is really starting to get into the mind of your attackers, where you can kind of deliver that intelligence value. Following the money, obviously a key part of this. Law enforcement was very helpful in this thing. One thing that kind of surprised me is that while many victims would talk to me and say, hey, can you help us recover your files? No, I can't, but sorry it happened. They would not necessarily share the details of their payments. It's like, no, I don't want to give that out. And I think this goes to the psychological aspect Lance was talking about. Ransom is a scary thing. Somebody saw some mob movie somewhere and thought if I shared this information with law enforcement, somebody would kill my cat or something.
Right. Another thing we saw is CryptoLocker targeted businesses. It was it was almost like opportunistic, but very spearish in its phishing email lists. It would pose as transportation type emails, like for such as mail companies and such. And then it would get in there and very effectively getting to that. And the question was, at $300, right, versus someone, in business, your number one tool is email, right? You're trying to move on your day, right? It's effective. It gets in your email system. You download an attachment that looks like, some kind of UPS or type like, email, right? And what would happen is you just want to move on your day, and then you're a CTO at a company and you're a VP and you got to move on, but you're also embarrassed. You don't want to be like, oh man, I just got owned like completely, and my boss is expecting this report tomorrow, right? That again, just like phishing does, where it gives this urgency, the sense of movement, was effective psychologically for that. We met a lot of people that were like, you know what, $300, moving on. It's work, laptop. I don't want to get fired, and that was actually the approach that we would find. So. No.
Also, it seemed that their preferred, they accept money packs. We saw all that stuff go to be withdrawn at the same place, but they preferred Bitcoin. In fact, tracking some of their Bitcoin wallets, we saw, for lack of a more accurate word, seed money, where, here's some money transferred into your Bitcoin wallet, get all the infrastructure in place that you need. So they prefer Bitcoin, but we also use this to derive the estimates that you saw. Now, that said, I think most people paid in money packs and other things because Bitcoin is not really an accessible currency to general unsophisticated computer user. Okay.
Not yet.
Not yet. So, the DGA, while provides some resiliency, also provides a good means to track their infrastructure relatively in near time. Once we had that DGA, you can simply, if you had that and you wanted to protect your network, you can simply just create a RPC zone, block hole all that stuff, so nobody in your infrastructure is going to get it, get an alert. You want to know that something's happening, so you can go clean that machine.
Right.
You could register sinkholes, that would be accessed by anybody on the internet. And this actually, we got really an OPSEC fail on this one. Of the 1,000 some odd domains that were registered, we were operating about 125 sinkhole domains to about one actual C2 proxy. So basically waving, hi guys, we own your stuff. Now, they never moved for whatever reason, and DGAs are not hard to tweak. Once you have an algorithm, they could have simply said year equals year minus 2, new 1,000 domains, and we'd have to reverse engineer that. They never did that. But we certainly got out of control of sinkholes, and that's something that we need to get better about.
And actually, I'm gonna skip ahead on a strategy that was discussed that we didn't have to because the Go's takedown, there's a two-prong, which we'll get into later. But one of the strategies that was neat about this was the fact that we were so obvious about the sinkholing and stuff we were doing. We were kind of letting them know that in some ways we realized there's a really good strategy. We can force them to move to a new DGA. Humans don't have while loops. They don't last very long. So if we force this, register all these domains, and then do this again, after a while they're going to change and tire out because the success is only going downward. We didn't have to end up doing this. We were in the process of doing it, and there was a shift in the Game Over Zeus side of things. So, luckily we didn't have to really push that part. But that was one of actually things we were being loud on purpose about in somewhat was we're letting you know what, you're in a cyber dog fight with us. We're gonna play hard. So.
Okay. The DGA also provided, a nice means to surveil their infrastructure. Ultimately, these domains had to resolve to something. So given a list of domains, you could do a for loop if you really wanted to, if you like slow scripts. Currently, like my surveillance scripting goes through 33,000 domains. Imagine how long doing NS lookups on those individually would be. But there's a bit of technical tricks. You can use a package called ADNS Tools, which is asynchronous DNS queries. It's basically spam your DNS server for 500 requests. They come back when they come back, and allows you to do these things relatively quickly. For 33,000 domains, it takes me about 30 seconds to get NS lookups back on all of them. So
if you use Haskell, it's actually built in natively.
Yeah, so. Well, there you go. If you do this, consider setting up passive DNS. Not to be commercial, I have no relationship with Farsight, but I use DNSDB because, it's a great resource. Consider that. That way, that's one way to passively give back with no real information, because this is the kind of stuff in DNS that I like, or passive DNS that I like being able to do as research. So kind of as an example, this is a feed that was generated out for simply domains registered, plus or minus 2 days. So if you're looking to surveil their infrastructure, There it is. Well, there it was. That was obviously from December of last year. But the way I generated this, there's a little bit of bias. Every time you do some intelligence exercise, you bring bias to the table. So the way I generated it is I stripped off the sinkholes. I don't care because that's not the business I'm in. My intelligence objective is to smash things. I don't really care about detection. I mean, I feel sorry for people who've got victims. You got to protect your infrastructure, but I want to disrupt these people and just kick these people off the internet. So I stripped out the sinkholes. Now, if you're doing it, or if you've got a network to protect, you don't care if they're talking to a sinkhole, NX domain, or a C2. You've got a problem, you need to address it.
I'm not going to bring up too many off times about how you just wanted to do burn was your thing that we kept talking about. So burn everything.
Burn all the things. Yes. Pillage first, then burn.
Pillage first, yeah. Then ask questions later.
Exactly.
And yet we're going to be talking about doing takedowns right.
Yeah, exactly. So as another particular aspect of kind of showing, how they changed over time. This is simply a chart of Bitcoin value since roughly July 1st of last year. Now, this had nothing to do with CryptoLocker, except that CryptoLocker liked Bitcoin payments. They, for whatever reason, thought their sweet spot value was $300. So about the time where you see, Bitcoin at $1,200, they chose 2 Bitcoins as the hard-coded value to get your files back. Well, it went from $300 to about $2,500. So they kept releasing new binaries that changed that so that they would change the value over time to be something around that $300. So they did have some decent situational awareness.
Yeah, and that's nice of them, too, at the same time. I want to keep the cost down.
Well, no, exactly. So, going back to kind of my earlier point is I'm not really interested in white paper or blog posts or whatever. I mean, people do that. It has value. I'm not saying it doesn't have value. What I want to see is bodies in the street because I'm tired of these clowns.
Right. I do want to mention something, though. Speaking of the politeness about their $300, actually, the actual pop-up was also extremely polite, wasn't it? It was kind of like this, hey, guess what's happened? Yeah. We're going to just kind of let you know that we kind of have your files. And it was funny because it was just polite. It's like, this is the situation. So, it almost makes us want to definitely burn them more in that sense and shut this down because the politeness was just kind of too much.
Well, it's not.
I think that's really where John's coming from here.
Well, it's not personal. This is just business. I'm sure they're nice people.
Yeah, sure.
No, they're not nice people, but they might be nice to have a drink with.
And say, we know who you are.
Yeah, exactly. One of the problems that we kind of ran into is a problem that I call sufficiency. I mean, at a certain point, if I could say it's talking to these domains and these IP addresses, you can put these rules in your IPS, most people are like, you know what, that's good enough for me. I don't need to do anything more. We can tolerate that threat. But, we get enough to satisfy these short-term objectives, move on to what's next. And if you're fighting fires all day long, I don't fault people for that. But we tolerate the continued existence of threats. Right. But the problem is that the people most in need of this protection aren't the ones who are paying for it. And quite frankly, we have, every organization here has people who go home and have personal laptops. They're probably reusing their same password for Facebook or Gmail or whatever. They may get access to this stuff at home, and that's leveraged to access people in work, at work.
And the impact here and the move on this and the short-term tactic also, and we may not have been thinking it at this time, but some of us probably were, but we're also sending a message quickly, right? And we need to keep that message going. And you even saw the FBI has been doing it lately. They're sending a message. They're getting progressive. They're moving forward. They're trying to say, hey, we're here and we're not stopping. We're going after this. We're going to be working with industry. We're going to be doing this. And I think on the industry side, we're also trying to say, we're not going to let this keep going on. We're going to take this back. A lot of people call offensive is hacking back, but it's really taking back. And that's what I think this was an offensive, meaning proactive maneuver to actually really kind of aggressively get this shut down. I mean, it was less than a year that this thing lasted, which is kind of a record breaker there. Yeah. So,
we hear that, less than a year, I feel bad. It's like we should be able to deal with this in weeks, not years. But it's
this
certainly
was a lot more advanced, though.
Well, yeah.
A lot more advanced. It took us by surprise. And I think
that's true.
I think it forced a difference in how we did things. We didn't just have single lone wolves doing things. Everybody did work together on this. It was actually kind of, in some ways you think it's a miracle because it's tough when you have competition or client, all these different people. But that all disappeared, which was, I think, was a remarkable part. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And kind of one last point is that, ultimately there comes a time, there's only so much you can do with passive intelligence. Every now and then you need to poke the bunny and see what they do. So
please consult your lawyers and your local sheriff's department.
Well, and there's some things you could do necessarily without law enforcement. At one point, they were using a DNS registrar that was known for hosting APT. Somebody gave me an email contact, so I email over there. Hey, these domains are hosting CryptoLocker. By any chance, do you have actual, real, identifiable information for them?
Please consult your lawyers and... sorry.
Well, I asked. You can ask. There's nothing wrong with that. They ended up just shutting the domains down. So, at that point, all right, well, how do they react to that? They kept going back. After a week of me shutting their domains down, they moved to another registrar. And then a month later, they moved back to the other one in China. So another contradictory indicator of saying, okay, what are these people doing? It didn't make a whole lot of sense. Which kind of goes into some of the human that we find, human intelligence, of trying to get inside their head, seeing what's going on. And ultimately, this was a very lucrative cash crop for them. They didn't necessarily have this as their primary motivation. This was something that funds were using to fund something else. We know what that is, but we can't tell you. But, this is something that we were able to find in observation and poking the bunny.
It's not personal. We just can't tell you.
Yeah, strictly business. So, but they also had some good OPSEC skills to a degree. They made some mistakes. They had the framework for fast flux and double flux. They had systems, their proxies, once we got our hands on them, they spent a lot of effort scrubbing things that we could otherwise use.
Which I'll go into detail in a bit.
Okay. So, another thing, I believe they bought their DGA from another provider. They never changed it. It's fairly easy to change. I think they bought it. Somebody plugged it in, they ran with it.
Wikipedia.
Yeah, exactly. And that Wikipedia article with that DGA example was posted about the same time, literally, as CryptoLocker emerged using that DGA. Yep. So an individual outed himself as probably more involvement than he cared to just by posting the Wikipedia. Yeah. Thanks for that, buddy.
Yes. The code was clean. You got to give it to him. It was code.
Exactly.
Code was clean and simple.
So, again, you paid your files, you got your ransom. Standard mob rules. They were crooks, but they were honest crooks.
Well, I still have a debate on this. You get infected, you get your files unencrypted, but you're still infected with Zeus. Yes. Which does something else like bank stealing and things. So what do you do next? Those are the things that you in the environment you have to ask yourself. If you're at home, you probably don't know Zeus is still on your computer. So that's was always an interesting debate on that. It's like, well, they've got you there, but some other piece of it also has you. Which obviously the effectivity of shutting down the Zeus piece with this was one of the agendas for this. So
absolutely. Nice. So some other stuff that sitting there searching out. Finding the stream of communications of victims, that they had with the attackers.
Oh, yeah.
So, there were people reaching out, hey, let's try to work something out. Now, they didn't tend to show mercy, but they tended to do troubleshooting.
Yeah, so I'm going to read this because you guys probably can't see it in the back, correct? Raise your hand if you can't see it. Right, can't? Okay, everybody has better eyesight than I do. Do you mind if I read it, though? You guys don't mind, right? So basically, we kind of had collected some of the communication that had gone on for ransomware. And one of them was like, and it personally is where it kind of hit me hard, was like, I'm a single mother, and we, with three, we live, thanks to my work, I can't lose it, but basically the ransomware was infecting her work computer. Please, there's a lot of rich people, but we aren't, and I have to work 10 hours from Monday to Sunday to take care of my children. Need your help. Tell me as soon as possible how to get my files without Bitcoin. Please help. And this was an issue with both the availability of Bitcoin to a person, a lay person, and also, people even at $300 can't afford this, and it is their work, and it could cost them their jobs. And this is like, I kind of looked at this, and this is what I was personally, I will make my own opinion on this, but I think it was right where it's like these people are just the lowest of lows, and this kind of highlights why we got aggressive very quickly. So,
a couple of fast facts about the DGA.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's something that was seen before. It was actually used in a previous campaign, Flashback, which was a Mac-based malware. Well, Flashback, Gauze, CryptoLocker, Windows stuff gave us the idea that this was bought and then just implemented in. This is not something that they developed.
Yeah, it's known as Taos 88 randomness. There's a lot of academic papers actually on the technique for this. Really simple, mostly modulus based of math. So this is the algorithm based off of the Wikipedia. The modular number, the actual modulus of the number is slightly different, but this is just a tweak. That's how they would do this. So.
Okay. So, back, map of infection, give you kind of an idea of a heat map.
Right. These are actually through sinkholes, and this is the importance of sinkholes, right? These are the types of things that gave us a lot of this information. Props to Nominet and Georgia Tech and a few other people that actually assisted from the working group.
Right. So, this is raw infection accounts. But what was really a better intelligence indicator was doing this per capita, showing the infections per country. And what we noticed, Canada, Britain, Australia, identical infections per country. Canada was about 75% of that. And that gave us an indicator that they were using the English language as being the primary language on the PC as how they were doing their selection. Because part of Canada is obviously French speaking. Now, there's plenty of other places that speak English, and that's why you see the noise kind of trail off there of other countries like Thailand, France, whatever. There are some English speaking expats or whoever there. So that gave some interesting information.
Yeah, so we were able to access seized drives, and we did some hard drive stuff, given to the time constraints and some of the details of continuing investigations. And we can give you some highlights. So the OPSEC was quite higher than what it was expected. We didn't really not expect it, but most situations when you find seized drives, most people don't think about the fact that they're seized, they'll be removed the computer and moved into another environment. So the tier 1, the first proxies and the tier 2 proxies, it was all in memory configs. They had Nginx going on, and they would actually run the config and then delete that config. If this got removed off of it, that's gone. So where it points to next. Now, we were lucky to use memory analysis to actually find a lot of these type of informations in pieces and bits and pieces. Tier 2, same way. The mothership used DMCrypt actually to encrypt the drives. We also had to use memory analysis and some tweaking of some mounting issues that it also had, because they were kind of trying to obfuscate some stuff. But we were able to pull some keys, IPs. The locale was Russian, a bunch of other stuff, and hopefully in further along after certain things are continue, we can give a lot more information about the entire thing, which could be its own talk. So, but it was very interesting stuff. So,
and the proxies may or may not have been vulnerable to Heartbleed at certain points in time. That's unclear on that point.
Unclear? Are you sure? John,
there's no physical evidence I had anything to do with that.
Okay, good. Okay.
Operation Tovar, going down to the takedown, was the law enforcement piece of this. Law enforcement, 13 countries, lots of individuals and organizations participated. This took Game Over Zeus and CryptoLocker offline, whole and entire. So, as of this writing, CryptoLocker is dead and gone.
Oh, wait, I just got false alarm.
Yeah, fair enough. Has not yet to emerge. There are some Gaz attempts out there. We don't think there's any victims, but it's clear that the bad guys are probing what we're doing to see how we're doing to prevent them from coming online, to see what registrars, what techniques they can use to get outside of our visibility. Yep. So, again, we're providing near-time surveillance of that too. So the domains are, being taken down fairly quickly.
The arms race is more, I guess, apparent than ever would have.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
So, did it work? Yeah. The reason law enforcement was involved, private sector was involved as true partners, but there was a lot of intelligence footwork done. What's the collateral damage? How will they react to it? And so that we know going into it what's going to happen. So we ended up waiting on the CryptoLocker takedown and merged it with Gaz for reasons we already talked about. But we spent a lot of time talking about the impact. What happens if we take those the server with the private keys offline? Well, victims can no longer pay. That is something that's relevant. It's a slower process, than I would like, but it's there. Now, that said, as of about 6 hours after writing this slide, there is Decrypt CryptoLocker, which uses techniques to basically decrypt those files. So now if you have a victim, even going back to August, September, now there's a means to recover those files if they didn't pay, and then they just put the stuff in a safe.
And again, that's a combination of the seized drives themselves working with industry, and so it's, they offer it free. So I think it's Decrypt. CryptoLocker.com. I think Fox IT and FireEye kind of worked together, and I'm sure law enforcement as well in Europe did.
Sure.
So that's exactly the kind of things we're wanting to see more of. So
how these techniques fail. Somebody goes it alone, just goes in storming like a bunch of Vikings, doesn't care about collateral damage, breaks everything.
You mean burn it all? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they burn before pillaging. So in essence, they respond with a quote. In the absence of the rule of law, all you have left is tribal justice. But that makes it hard for people to do well thought out takedowns. So, future of ransomware, it's dead. CL is dead, but it's captured the imagination. There'll be other things out there. There are a couple of examples out there. I'm going a little bit faster because we're pretty much at our deadline here. There was ransomware might be a little generous. It was a technique of locking iPhones for ransom using the Find My iPhone service. There was a cloud service company where somebody basically said, pay us this or we're going to delete all your stuff. They didn't pay the ransom, and an entire company went out of business. So protecting cloud services matters. That's an extortion-based attack. There are a couple of other things that use Tor and Bitcoin. So techniques, I think DGAs will be out there for a while. Tor and Bitcoin will still be used. Bitcoin provides a lot of benefit to the bad guys, even if it's not accessible to everybody.
Right. And to rush in, but most of the ransom techniques are really about resiliency and staying persistent. Again, just through if you guys didn't get time, but I'm pretty sure you guys can catch that. Bitcoin, anonymity, disabling shadow volume copies to hold up for recovery, things like that. So.
No, absolutely. So, the good news is a lot of the intel tools that we developed for this, we can simply reuse to other threats. We've got a to-do list of other things we want to continue to working on. Here's the call to action here. There's more problems than there are people worth solving it. This takedown worked because a lot of people contributed their time, their effort, and their skills to it, even if it wasn't full-time work. Again, the short-term actions, okay, I've blocked this from my network, move on, that yields value for an organization, but it doesn't yield the long-term results. So, if you would like to help us with this, burn, because, I'm a pyro, whatever, by all means, get in touch with us. Conclusion of every security talk ever given in the history of security, technology is risky and people don't like you. So, questions?
Any burn notices?
Yeah.